So I've got a family. I've got a 5-month-old daughter. I work full time. I've got loads of other commitments, as many other language learners have in their adult life. And I haven't got time to be arsing about on the internet for several hours a week and paying hundreds of pounds for the privilege to somebody just to sit there and listen to me and say, oh, that's good, that's bad. So we are 60 days into the cabin experiment, getting fluent in French, sitting down here with coffee, putting the hours in. I'm going to give you a bit of an update as to what has been going on, in particular a really interesting new technique that I've introduced into what I'm doing that's massively amped my output ability, my speaking ability, that's so often missing with language learners. And the second thing is I'm going to have a bit of a rant about all the crap that's on the internet at the moment about language learning, hacks for this and tips for that. It's just so bland and insipid and all the same. And to be honest with you, a lot of it's a load of rubbish. So stick around. I'm going to have a chat about that and we'll see where we go. So 60 days is a really long time to be putting in 3-4 hours a day. That's what I'm doing at the moment. So 2 of those hours are doing shadowing, what I call shadowing plus, which is basically I listen to authentic content, I read the words as I'm doing it, and I speak aloud at the same time. But it's not just for accent, it's not just for matching the speaker and what they're saying. It's actually it's to get the context as well. So I'm just using slightly harder materials than I can just about manage. So that's the whole crash and input thing, right? So I'm like kind of ticking off that box. But fluency is really hard work. And one of the things that is massively missing, I've discovered in my language learning, and I know so many people are struggling with this, I know it, is the ability to speak. You know, we're told, oh God, it lags so far behind, 6-9 months behind before you can even speak a word or string a sentence together. And certainly that's what I experienced in, years gone by trying to learn a language. And the difficulty with that is that it just takes too long. It just bursts your motivation bubble. It's so exhausting. And I have, by accident, actually found a technique. So this isn't a hack or a tip. This is a technique that's been tested in this cabin by me, putting the hours in. And also it's evidence-based as well. As I said, I'm a researcher. I've spent a long time before I started this fluency journey looking at a lot of the literature, the journal articles, the books online, reading the most up-to-date linguistic materials that there is. And so I'm pretty sure that this is evidence-based and it's going to work. I've just got to put the hours in. And that's the problem that a lot of people don't see. You've got to put the hours in. But this technique, this thing that I'm doing, well, I realized last week, so I was up to about 250,000 words that I'd shadowed, which is a massive amount, I think, by anybody's estimation. And I'm really starting to see great improvements in my ability to read and listen. There have been dips where some days I come back and I just can't read or hear things that I'd heard the week before. I start to lose the meaning of certain words. But according to the literature, according to the research, that is all part of how your memory consolidates memory within the neurons, within the memory engrams, within your kind of structures, and starts to move it from that, they call it declarative memory at the front, where you have to think about what you're doing, into that more procedural stuff where it's automated, the language is automated. And you're sitting here now listening to me speak and you can understand what I'm saying. You're not tripping over every word or trying to think what every word is, right? So that works. Input does work for that. It's great. It does massively improve your comprehension of what's been said. And by doing that, you pick up loads of vocabulary and loads of grammar as well. So that's, all good. No problems at all. The difficulty comes with speaking. So I have been using AI for practice because it removes that affective filter, that stress of kind of speaking to a real person. Plus, to be honest with you, I can't afford it at the moment to be paying a tutor for a few hours a week to do this. I've got a family. I've got a 5-month-old daughter. I work full time. I've got loads of other commitments, as many other language learners have in their adult life. And I haven't got time to be arsing about on the internet for several hours a week and paying hundreds of pounds for the privilege to somebody just to sit there and listen to me and say, oh, that's good, that's bad. So I'm using AI, but I found a problem with using the AI, and that problem was when I was kind of having a conversation with the AI, it was taking on a role, say as a shopkeeper or whatever. I wasn't just having to try and think of what the French words were to communicate. I was having to kind of almost make up the scenario, make up and pretend, I've got things to say about like an imaginary scenario that I'm not sitting in. I'm not in that shop doing those things, buying that stuff, deciding what to purchase. And there's huge problems in that because you're essentially giving yourself double the load, right? So what you're doing is you're not only having to recall the French, but you're also having to try to make stuff up in your head about what you want to say. And it just overloads your brain circuits, I've found. I just really struggle, and I'm in an RN and I just can't. It's just too much hard work. So I thought, well, what can I do? So then I thought, well, I still think AI is at the heart of this problem in terms of a solution. So what I actually did was I got AI to create some sheets for me. And these sheets are almost like mini stories. And I asked it to use the most common 50 to 100 bits of vocabulary and the most common 20 verbs to start with on these sheets in everyday situations like going to the bank and buying some bread from the boulangerie and all that kind of, all that jazz. And so they're stuff that you would need. And I asked it to start off with really simple tenses, like the present tense, and then a bit of the past tense, and then maybe a touch of future tense. Because the future tense always seems much more difficult. And I think the research certainly shows that the future tense kind of comes later for some reason. Who knows why? I don't think the research is completely clear on that, but it is what it is. And what I did is I created these sheets, and they're about 300 words long, just a little story, which, so a bit of talking to somebody and then a bit of self-reflection and then talking to myself almost about my day and things. So it bounces between tenses and between sort of the first person, second person, all that stuff. And what I did is I did it as a scriptorium to start with. And what that means is that you have the English translation and the French translation in the way I'm doing it. And you write out the French words first. So you're practicing your writing. Great. Because if I want to go and work in France next year, I've got to be able to write as well as speak and listen. And then what you do is you look at the English translation after you've done that and try to recall the French and write that out, but at the same time as speaking it. And I did that a couple of times. And I was absolutely astonished because, first of all, I started noticing really interesting stuff in the grammar, in terms of what the grammar, how it works and things. And this isn't grammar study. I know grammar study is boring. I'm not sitting here with a grammar book, right? I'm not doing rote learning of the first tense, the second tense, the past, the future, and all that stuff. What I'm doing is, this is in context. This is stuff that is usable, but I'm noticing the grammar. That's the big difference. I'm not studying it purposefully as such. I'm noticing the grammar, and these sheets are done in such a way that they use grammar in a particular way that allows me to kind of internalize it. And so what I did with that is I did that a few times, and then I started rotating sheets and keep coming back to the stuff. So you're getting a bit of spaced repetition. All the people that use Anki cards and stuff like that, they love all this stuff. But it's not sterile. I'm not just looking at a word or a couple of words or a sentence in isolation. It's part of the story. So it's sticking in my head. I've got that kind of mental model of that story. And then what I did was I then took that sheet and I went into my AI conversation. I went into my conversation with the AI, and I used that sheet, just the English, so not the French words. And I had conversations with AI where I used some of those English sentences, obviously talking in French, but by looking at the English, I was recalling the French, so I'm getting the proper recall. I wasn't having to make the stuff up. And it just seemed to flow. It was brilliant. I mean, I was speaking about stuff and it was making the language stick in my head. That's the first thing, because I've come away now and I could probably recite you 2 or 3 of those sheets off the top of my head now. They're stuck in my head because I did that spaced repetition, English to French. I even went back the other way, looking at the English and then translating, as many ways as I could kind of pull it apart in a kind of like conjugate method. So if you've ever... with this conjugate method, if you've ever seen any powerlifting or weightlifting, I go down the gym, do lots of weightlifting. And if you just keep hammering the same heavy lifts every single day, the same stuff, your body just doesn't adapt. It gets broken down. It doesn't work properly. And so what they do is they use the conjugate method. So they introduce a bit of speed work, a bit of kind of a slightly different angle. And this all helps you to keep progressing without breaking down. And using these sheets in this way is kind of helping me to do that. But also, importantly, it's providing me with a scaffold. So I'm not having to make stuff up on the fly. So I'm able to concentrate on actually producing the French. So this isn't me, having a question from the AI and then just reading out the French. I am looking at the English. My brain is having to fish around for the French words, and then I'm coming out with it. But then what I started to notice was, after a couple of days of doing that then when I was recalling those sentences, I was then starting to, reply to the AI by putting additional words and sentences around the edges, because that seemed natural to do. All those filler words like perhaps and although and sometimes and, all these kind of connectors that make language sound like you're not a robot, like you're actually speaking and communicating to somebody. And so it's working. And then what I noticed as well is, once I'd done that work, apart from having that big dopamine hit of all of a sudden being able to actually speak and communicate properly, in a meaningful way, when I went back to the podcast I've been shadowing, I started to spot all of those language patterns in those new grammatical tenses that I'd learned. I kept spotting them, and every time I spotted them, I was getting excited, and it felt like that was kind of encouraging my brain to lay down those memories of like those grammar structures. I was seeing them in different contexts, in slightly different ways, but I was recognizing them, and now I can start to produce them much better than I did a few weeks ago. So kind of in a way, those two techniques together seem to be providing some sort of synthesis, they've got some sort of like relationship between them, where they are both amping each other up, basically. They are improving and increasing the efficacy of each kind of standalone technique, the shadowing, and then this scriptorium plus, or whatever you want to call it, the conjugate method of output. And it's working really well. It's given me a massive motivation boost. But that's not all. You can't just have these techniques and then just become fluent. And that comes on to my second thing I wanted to talk about today, which is my annoyance and my absolute fury at all the rubbish that is floating around on the internet at the moment, videos around where people are just trotting out the same old stuff over and over again about do this and you'll become fluent, do that, you become fluent. And yeah, there are loads of techniques out there, and I've just told you about two of the techniques I'm using. But the point is that the techniques that I'm using, if you just try to use them a little bit, you are not going to get fluent. I'm having to put in hours a day, every single day, whether I'm feeling sick, whether I've got a bit of a hangover, whether I'm busy with other stuff. I'm having to find the time. I'm having to get up extra early in the morning to come down to my cabin in the cold, in the dark, when my family's fast asleep, to put the hours in and do the graft. And it's only by that repetition and continual motivation that you're going to build something great. And, I take this cabin that I'm in now as a good example. So I built this myself. I completed it about, 3 months ago or so. And it took me a long time. I had to use the correct tools. I like to use, old kind of carpentry tools in particular, sort of traditional tools and traditional techniques to do some of the jointing and other things. And it just, the sense of achievement you get from building something up by spending every day just working hard, just making sure everything is precise and correctly done, brings with itself its own motivation. So yes, you can take those hints and you can take those hacks and you might be able to do something with them. A lot of them are the same, to be honest. They just talk about, well, do loads of input. Well, great. What does that mean? You don't see a lot of detail that they go into, or use some flashcards for spaced repetition. Well, hello, that doesn't actually work because people get bored, because it is so boring. It's as dull as ditch water. So ultimately, you've got to put the graft in. And the end result, like this cabin I'm sitting in now, is what drives you. It's what drives you, what motivates you. And it's the same with fluency. When you start to be able to speak spontaneously, I'll give you an example. Last week, I had my first dream in French. I actually dreamt in French and used the words, French words, to speak to somebody. It was just about 6 words. It was a sentence, but it was French. I was dreaming in French. Wasn't translating, didn't seem weird. So obviously something is happening. That language is starting to embed into my mind. And also, as well, I'm finding that I'm starting to lose some of my English words. Sounds bizarre, but I'm getting interference from the second language I'm learning. I'm told, according to the research, that this is a temporary phenomenon. I hope so, because I'm an academic and I need words. That's my livelihood. But I am scratching around for English words when I'm talking about everyday situations. It's almost been like a bit forgetful. So these are things that are happening that are giving me the confidence that something is happening under the hood inside my brain that I cannot explain at the moment, but it feels good. It's motivating me to carry on. It is a lot of hard work. And I just hope, this is a new channel, so I haven't got many subscribers or viewers at the moment. I hope you do subscribe, because I'm going to keep telling you how it is. I'm going to do this experiment, whether it succeeds or fails, I don't care. I know that I've done my best, put the work in. And by developing these techniques and these ways of working and refining them, I'm refining all the time, analysing what's going on and trying to improve it. Then I'm hoping that somebody will watch these videos and be able to just copy what I'm doing and be able to get fluent in a language within a year if they put the graft in. You can't do it in a month. You can't do it in 3 months. You've got to put the graft in. So that's all I've got to say. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of a rant at the end, and just a bit of that, highlight about what I've discovered in the last couple of weeks to kind of improve my activation, my speaking. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps me to know that people are interested in what I'm saying and what I've got to do. And I hope to see you very soon in the next video.